about 15 lines up from the bottom. It starts Tashma. I'm sorry, the line starts Avida. We're in the middle of the line. We'll start from the words Tashma. Okay, we were discussing a Machlekes Abaye and Rava about Lechi Yomid Me'elav, a post that wasn't put there as a mechitza, but just happens to be there. Abaye says that's considered a post and you can carry there on Shabbos. And Rava said that it's not. The way we explained it was that the Machlekes Abaye and Rava is regarding if a post is considered a mechitza or it's considered a heker. According to Abaye, it's considered a mechitza, so it doesn't need to be put there because of you wanted it to permit you to carry. And Rava says no, the post is considered a heker, so it's just there to show you where to stop. So then it has to have been placed there with the intention that it should work. Now, we said that everyone agreed if there was a lechi there before Shabbos, a real lechi, one that you put there on purpose, and then it fell down on Shabbos. So, and you have this other lechi that you didn't want to rely on, then everyone agrees that this lechi doesn't work. The machlekes is if when you were actually trying to rely on this lechi, Abaye says it works and Rava says it doesn't. So Tashma. Avnei geder yitzis min hageder. You have a fence made out of stone, and the stones are protruding one on top of the other. So it's like a wall that has protrusion. Let's get a picture, it'll be easier. Okay. So here we have Negeder Hayetzis Negeder. You have these stones that are protruding. Now, what it says here is that if in between one stone and the next is less than 3 tvachim, then that's considered combined and it's considered a lechi. But if the spaces, the gaps in between each layer of bricks is 3 tvachim, so when they have the one above it protruding, it's not connected to the one below because there's a 3 tvachim gap there. Then you need another lechi. Well, what's happening here is that this looks like you did not put this there as a lechi. Nevertheless, it's working. It just looks like a wall that's broken. So, but it's working. So it's a raya Abaye. The Gemara says, no, Rava will respond, you put this there on purpose. You built it like that. It should be a lechi. Yachi pshita. So then what do I need a Mishnah to tell me if you put a lechi, it works? It's a lechi. It says, well, this type of lechi actually looks like you're doing something else. It looks like you're trying to run a new wall alongside of it. Because how would you attach another wall is by having these stones sticking out. I'd be able to insert stones to hold, to grasp it. So it doesn't look like a lechi, and that's the problem. Okay, Kamash Milan that it works anyway. We're just looking for a chiddush. So you put it there on purpose, and there's a chiddush that it doesn't look like a lechi. Tashema. Tani Reb Chia taught, Kaishel Sitzidech et Kanas Mechaveri. Mentionir me b'chutz v'shav lefnim, mentionir me lefnim v'shav mechutz nid mishum lechi. this we had earlier. This is I have to go back here to an earlier picture. Go back to picture 110. Oops. So this is a lechi you can only see from one side. Nira mi bachutz. It's a lechi like this. You can see it only on one end. From the outside, or you can see it from the inside. Here's one of them also. You can see it from the inside, you can see it from the outside. So Reb Chia taught one wall ends a little earlier than the other one. Whether it's on the inside or it's the outside, it's a good lechi. Seems like you don't have to do this on purpose. It's a raya tabaya, it's a kashan rava. No, we're talking about that you made it specifically like that, so it should be a lechi. Yachi my kamash malan. If so what's the chiddush? So kamash malan, this is a chiddush. Because near mi bachutz v'shavim mipnim nidim shum lechi. That if only the outside people can see it, that it's a lechi, that's the chiddush itself. You don't need a bigger chiddush than that. Okay. Now, Tashma. The Rav had the Yasir Bahumavua. Rav was sitting in this alley. Rabbi Yasir Rav Huna Kamei. Rav Huna is a student of Rav, and he was sitting together with him. Amalei L'Shami. So Rav tells to his servant, Zelaisli Kuza Demaya, go bring me a jug of water. Ad Asa Nafalachia. While he was going, the lechi falls down. It's like bad luck. So he can't bring it. He doesn't notice though that the lechi fell down. Achvele biyade kamaduchte. Achvele biyade. They signaled him, stop. Probably like this. The lechi is down. So kamaduchte. He stays where he is. Amalei, maybe achvele biyade kamaduchte. No, achvele biyade probably. They signaled him kamaduchte and he stops. Amalei Rav Huna le'savla mar l'smechadikla. It happened to be that there was a palm tree right at the entrance to the alleyway. And Rav Huna suggests to Rav that yes, the lechi fell down, but there's a tree there. And the tree can act as a lechi if you accept abaya. That if you don't have to put the lechi, you don't have to put the post there on purpose. Omar, Rav says, Dami haimi rabbanan kamandali parsh yinshi shmaita. This student looks like no one ever explained to him the sugya. Did we rely on that tree yesterday? Now, that's a very important point. We started the sugya by saying, that if there was a real lechi that showed that you weren't relying on this, then everyone agrees that it doesn't work. So here they put up a lechi. Machlekes Abaye and Rava is if there was never a lechi there, and you were just intending to use this tree, let's say. But here, they weren't intending to use the tree clearly because they had an actual lechi there. It happened to have fallen down. So what's even Rav Huna's suggestion? That's what Rav is saying. But the Gemara then now says, Taimad le'samchina. What's the reason why it's no good? It's because they weren't relying on the tree yesterday. Hasamchina and havilechi. It's mashma, Rav, that if they would have relied on it yesterday, it would be acceptable. It's a raya ta'abaya. Now the Gemara says, Lema abaya barava, but lesamchina ala pligi. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe Abaye and Rava are not arguing about a case where they were not relying on it yesterday. Maybe they're arguing about a case where they were relying on it yesterday. Hasamchinan habelechi. Hasamchinan ala habelechi. But they would agree the opposite. If they were relying on it yesterday, then it would work. In other words, the whole machlekes now, let's say the whole machlekes is in a case where you had an actual lechi and it fell down. And Abaya says it's good. But if you didn't have an actual lechi and you were just relying on this tree, then even Rava would say it's good. Maybe that's the machlekes. Maybe it's exactly the opposite of the way we thought. The Gemara says, don't think like that. The machlekes is it's only when you did not have another lechi and you're relying on this. Abaya says it's good, Rava says it's not. How do you know? There was a balcony. David Bey Bar Chavu, that was in this place, the house of Bar Chavu. That they were arguing all the years. Let me show you what the picture this fellow made, and then you'll see how that should work. To go back to where we're holding. So, since we remember circles and mikvahs. Okay, here's our balcony. You see the balcony? It has a support. I'm not sure which one they're relying on. Yeah, that one. They're relying on that one. So that balcony has that support. Now that is a lechi ayman me'elav. That lechi was not made as a lechi. It was made to support the balcony. So, and there was no other lechi there. And that was a machlekes Abaya and Rava. So you see, the machlekes Abaya Rava is not when you had an actual lechi. Machlekes Abaya Rava is when you didn't have an actual, when you did not have a real lechi. You were just trying to rely on the lechi ayman me'elav, and that's the machlekes. Okay. Rashi concludes this sugya.
What's the conclusion that Abaya here, that Talach is like Abaya? This is one of the 6 places.
Yeah. Rashi concludes the sugya that Talach is like Abaya. If you look,
but it wasn't passed like that in the Gemara.
The Gemara didn't have any conclusion. Every raya we answered up, maybe put that there on purpose.
But isn't this concept of Yel Kagam a Gemara thing? It's not a Rishonim, or it's a...
Right. The only problem is, what does Yel Kagam stand for? I remember it was before. I mentioned something about this. Oh.
Is the Lamed
apparently Rabbeinu Tam has a different meaning of that acronym. What's the Lamed? Could be it's Leda. I think I remember from Nida that there was a machlekes Abaya and Rava also, and
but where is the concept of Yel Kagam mentioned? Because I've heard this before, but it's
most of us know it from Yesh Lamidas, in the second parak above Mitzvah and Elam Mitzias.
Right.
Yesh Lamidas, if someone loses an object that he would have given up hope on.
But does the Gemara say that it's halacha k'abaya?
Hilchos k'abaya b'yal kagam. That the Gemara uses that expression. Hilchos k'abaya b'yal kagam. Now, what does Yal Kagam stand for? So Abaya gives a list, and Tosfos has his own understanding of that list. Yeah, in the Shulchan Aruch, it's asking like Abaya. That's what we looked up after.
But in the actual Gemara, it doesn't actually say that the halacha is like Abaya. It just kind of ends off with making it seem like it can be like Abaya.
Right. And over here it doesn't tell us Yal Kagam. Right, which it could have. Maybe that's a proof.
For an actual place?
I think in Elam Mitzias it said Hilchos k'abaya b'yal kagam.
No, in the art
Rashi spells it out.
In the art scroll, it says that it's really like Rav.
Halachas like Rava?
It's Rav. It's the story of Rav, so it's just the explanation that Abaya is going to quote. It's really the halacha is like Rav. And since Abaye coincides with Rav, so that's why.
Isn't that interesting? So who would say that? Is that how Tosfos says?
I don't know. This is what the art scroll is saying. It's a new Tosfos art scroll. That's why it doesn't say the halacha is like a bay.
Oh, it doesn't need to say it because we have a ma'aser, we have a story. Okay. Okay, we have a Mishnah now. Bakolos and l'chaim. That's not a. That's not talking about l'chaim. You can make a lechi out of anything. Bakolos and l'chaim. You can make a post in an alleyway out of anything. I feel a bit of a shesh beruachayim, even if it's an animal, something that's alive, because you tie it to the wall. That's considered a lechi. Rav Meir doesn't accept.
What's with
It's alive. I'm sorry? One second, I don't hear you. Tell me again. You got muted.
What is with Tzar Balei Chaim?
Is it considered Tzar Balei Chaim to tie it up there? I hear what you're saying. I guess not if you put some food there and you give it this water, and the animals would get tied. Maybe not so tight. You give it a little. Okay. Rav Meir Reiser. Rav Meir doesn't accept this. Now we say that if you use an animal as a cover to a grave, so it's going to give off tumah like the cover of a coffin, like the cover of a grave. Now Rashi has this expression here, very surprising. Even after you remove it, it still remains tameh. The Rambam argues on that. While it's there, it's tameh. It gives off the tumah of the grave. Rav Meir Matar. Rav Meir says that it's not tameh. The kaisma of geti nashim. You can write a get on the hide, on the skin of the animal. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says you cannot write it on the animal. Say someone wants to give his wife a get, he doesn't have paper, or he wants to do two things in one go. He wants to write the get and let the get reach her, and maybe the animal will walk over, and now he has to hand it to her. He has to throw it to her. So he's going to give her the animal and say, here is your get, and it comes together with like a little sheep or whatever. For dinner. So it's a machlekes. The Tanakam says that works, and Rabbi Yossi Aglili says it doesn't. Tanya, the Gemara starts off with the brisa. Anything that's alive, Rabbi Meir says, cannot be a wall of a sukkah, cannot be a lechi for a mavi, cannot be the corner of the well that we've learned about a bunch of times. In order to get water out of a well on Shabbos, you need to have corners to take the water out. It's two walls. Now you can't put an animal in the corner, tie it up, and say that that's considered the wall. And it also doesn't work as a gravestone. Not a gravestone, it's the cover of a grave. That's Reb Meir's opinion. In other words, all the halachas that would apply to those things doesn't work with an animal. And in the name of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, they said that it also doesn't work to write a get on. My time with the Rabbi Yossi Aglili, we jump into the last thing. What's the reason for Rabbi Yossi Aglili? Rabbi Yossi Aglili was in the time of Rabbi Akiva. Maybe he was a student, maybe a friend. It was a mixture of both. The Tanya was taught in the Brisa. We're asking why an animal won't work to write a get on. You could write it on paper, you could write it on parchment. Why can't you write it on the back of the animal? So it says Sefer. The pasuk says V'kas of law Sefer Krisus. You should write for her a bill of divorce. This is not a bill. It's not a document. Ainli ela Sefer. Maybe it needs to be a document, that means a klaf, parchment scroll. Minayin l'rabis kol davar. How do you know that you can write it on anything? You can write it on a piece of wood, on a board, on a clay tablet. You can write it on any of those things. Talmud Laimar v'kasavla. It says you should write it for. It doesn't really need to be a scroll. It doesn't need to be a sefer. In kin matam Laimar sefer. So why did the pasuk say sefer? Sefer means a piece of parchment. Laimalach, it's coming to teach you. Ma sefer davar shein beruach chayim ve'eino eichel. Av kol davar shein beruach chayim ve'eino eichel. Tesis points out that it's the sages choose different things to say what they want to use in these types of comparisons. So here they said, well, why does it say sefer? Well, just like a scroll is something that's not alive and it doesn't eat. So too, you can only use things that aren't alive and don't eat. That's what you can use as a get. So the Rabbanan that say that you can use an animal as a get, in other words, you write the bill of divorce on the top of the animal. They say, what about it says sefer? So they say, Rabbanan miksiv is sefer. Does it say in a scroll that you should write it? Sefer ksiv. It just says sefer. What does sefer mean? The spheres tvarim ba'almodas. It's just, you just have to tell over the words of the bill of divorce, which is basically you are now divorced. So you just have to say that. You have to state that in the document, but you don't have to. It doesn't mean that it needs to be an actual scroll. Today we don't use a scroll anyway. Today we use paper, but we would know that. How do you know you're allowed to use paper? How do you know you can use these other things? Well, according to Rabbi Yossi, because it says v'kasav, Rabbi Yossi because it says v'kasavli, you can use anything as long as it doesn't eat. And according to the Rabbanan, how do you know you can use other things? It never said that you needed a scroll. It didn't say b'sefer. Sefer just means to tell over. Well, v'Rabbanan, hay v'kasav l'maydarshi base. So then why does it need to say v'kasav that you should write it? For Rabbi Yossi Aglili, v'kasav included all other items that you could write on. For the Rabbanan, just say, I don't know, sefer krisis. Or nasama maybe. It says no. Ahumi bayule b'ksiva miskareshes vein miskareshes b'kesef. The Rabbanan say no. It has to say v'kasav. If it doesn't say that you should write it, then I could have thought that there's other ways of getting divorced. I don't know what the divorce is in other law. I think I read in somewhere that in Muslim law, I think they just say get out 3 times or something. I don't know if that's, I read that in a kid's books. I don't know if that's.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Maybe they would have thought, just like Isha Niknes Bekesef Star Bia, since she has a ksuba, the ksuba is monetary. All she has to do is give the ksuba with the money, you're out. Doesn't have to write anything.
Exactly. That's what the Gemara is suggesting. That we could have thought that it goes like this, because there's a comparison between divorce and marriage. Just like the marriage was with money, he gave her a ring, which has value. So to the divorce would be with money. He gives her money. Or maybe she gives him. No, it would be he gives her money, and that would be the divorce. So Kamashmalan that no, the divorce is done with the bill of divorce, a document. It has to say v'kasavla. But the document is what makes the divorce.
In the Indian Seminole society, which is matriarchal, the wife says to the husband, get out. He takes his gun and he leaves.
Uh-huh.
So she divorces him.
Wow.
She throws him out of the house if he doesn't behave. And she goes on and finds another husband.
Wow. And how does marriage...
I would take my guns also.
How does marriage also work where she marries him?
I think that's more involved with the families. I think the parents of both people get together.
Uh-huh.
That's more Jewish, and they make the deal, and then the kids get married. Divorce is up to the woman after that, once the family is formed.
I've heard about the tribes, that the elders decide on these things.
I heard in similar societies that the woman tells the husband, get out. He takes a gun, he shoots the wife, says, that's it, pull her out. Just kidding.
Daf Yomi, gentlemen, Daf Yomi.
Okay. Rabbi Yossi Aglili. What about Rabbi Yossi Aglili? Hi, Svarim Minale. How does he know that the divorce needs to take place with writing? Maybe it's with money, because he doesn't have the extra V'kasav law. He only has, for him, V'kasav law tells me that you can use other items. Well, sounds like it's rewriting it anyway. The Gemara says, Nafkalami Sefer Krisus, Sefer Karsa Vein Davaracha Karsa. I guess what he's saying is, what the Gemara is saying, is that maybe you can use other items to divorce. You can use a document, but you can also use money to divorce. How do you know that you can't use money to do the divorce? So he says, well, it says Sefer Krisus, the combination of a bill of divorce. So he knows from the combination, not from the word V'kasav law, but from the combination of Sefer Krisus. That means that it's the document that causes the divorce. The document of divorce is not recording a divorce. The document of divorce is making the divorce, not like a ksuba. A ksuba just records an obligation. It's just saying that this attests to something that took place, or it attests to an obligation that the husband takes on himself. The bill of divorce is actually what does the divorce. You write in this, that with this document you will be divorced. And then he hands it to her. When she acquires it, she becomes divorced. So that's how the divorce takes place. The Rabbanan, what do the Rabbanan do with that Sefer Krisus? It says, Hi Sefer Krisus mi boile l'davar k'eretz beina lebeina. They say that a divorce needs to be 100%. Look at the Tanya. As it says in the Brisa, let's say he divorces her. When he divorces her, he gives her a condition. You're divorced, but on condition that you never drink wine again. Maybe she had some addiction and whatever. He makes up some condition there that's going to hold her for her entire life. If she wants to be considered divorced, she can never drink wine. If she drinks wine, the divorce is invalid. Or you can never go to your parents' house. If she goes to the parents' house, all of a sudden the divorce becomes invalid, which means that she's still attached to him because of these obligations. The divorce needs to be that they're totally severed. There is no attachment. So ain't a krisis. But let's say it says kol shleishim yayim. There is an end. It's not an indefinite condition. There is a definite limit to this condition, and you can put a condition on a get. So we don't do conditions on get nowadays, but already for a long time. But from Mishnah and the Gemara time, there could have been a condition. So if he says, you can't drink wine for 30 days after the get is written, so 30 days go by, she'll be divorced. If she drinks wine, then she's not divorced. So kol shleishim yom is a krisis. If she says just for 30 days, then it's not an indefinite condition. The divorce will work. Okay, so that's what the Rabbanan do with Sefer Krisis, that it needs to be severing, not something that's still holding them together.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
So for this example then, like for the wine, they would have to have witnesses on whether or not she drank the wine, or?
Yeah. Somehow they need to know that she invalidated it.
Okay. It would have to be a court determination at some point that.
It could be that, I don't know if it would be Eid Echad. I don't know how it would work.
Okay.
How it would work. Well, you need by the get, you need witnesses there to make the get actually work. Which witnesses are the ones that sign in the get, the one that's watch the get? That's machlekes. That's machlekes and getting. But I don't know if you would need two witnesses to invalidate it. It could be one witness says, like saying, I'm not sure. That's a good question.
I think if you had two witnesses, you'd be more safe.
Right.
That way,
100%.
Rosh or Tom could argue. If you had three, then it would be a mess. Just
Okay.
my thought of doing nothing. Okay, thank you.
Rabbi Yossi Aglili Naftali Mikaris Krisis. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that the word karis means severed, but this word is longer. This is krisis. So it could have said sefer karis. It says sefer krisis. Oh, there's an extra, some extra letters there. That teach me that they need to be severed. Rabban karis krisis leidashi. This is usually how these sort of machlekes end with. Does this one use those extra letters that the other one is using? In other words, they have a machlekes. Can you use something that's alive? And basically, because of that, we have this one learns from this one learns from that. Well, what does he do with this? What does he do with that? All the way it boils down until at the end, it simmers down to there's one like extra letter, two extra letters that one says you can learn from that, the other one says, nah, that's just the normal way of writing. You don't learn from that.
Rabbi, so there was no child support or alimony that continued the way we have today? It had to be a cash settlement at first?
What happens is that all the support, there is an amount of money that's in the ksuba that needs to be given.
Right, before the divorce.
That could be satisfied by child support, alimony, all of those things. That could satisfy the obligation of the ksuba. So I guess it could be given in one go. Here's your ksuba. But that's just a monetary obligation. That doesn't affect the validity of the divorce.
But these
if
other
they're divorced and he owes money.
Yeah.
And she could collect it from whenever,
Okay. So that's not a condition then?
That's not a condition in a divorce.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
It's not a condition in a divorce today either. No, right? Even in modern, it's not like, you didn't pay the alimony, you're back married. It's not how it works, right?
Okay.
Okay. Mishnah, new Mishnah. Shiyara shechansa bebeka v'kifua klei behema. The caravan. That, Dr. Stein, what is that representing?
That was the woman reading her ksuba.
Oh, okay.
At least on the internet.
Okay. A caravan that's stopped in an open area, and they wanted to be able to carry on Shabbos. So he put the items around the area where their vessels. Everyone puts their things around to make a wall around. They can carry there. As long as it creates a fence of 10 tvachim. You can't have more gaps than standing wall. It has to be majority standing. If you did it correctly, where you don't have more gaps than opening, then if you have a gap that's 10 amas, it's not a problem. It means up to 10 amas. That doesn't invalidate the wall, because that's just the doorway. Yeser mikan, if you have more than that, then it's aser. In other words, a gap larger than 10 amas invalidates even if there's more wall. That's what we're learning here. Even if the majority, 3 sides are surrounded, but you have a huge gap on one side of more than 10 amas, that invalidates the whole area. Okay, if you notice in this Mishnah, we said it needs to be majority wall. Itmar is a statement of Amiroim. Paretz ka'omed. Let's say you have an exact amount of gaps as standing wall. That's going to be the discussion from here until the next Mishnah. Our Mishnah said that you need to have majority wall. Let's say it's 50-50. All right? This is our discussion. If it's exactly a gap to standing. Well, Rav Papa Mutter, Rav Papa says that's fine. You don't have majority open. Rav Huna Breder Rabbi Shua, Amarasa, Rav Huna Breder Rabbi Shua, these are later Amiraim, they're students of Abai and Rava. Rav Huna Breder Rabbi Shua says that it's Aser. Rav Papa Mutter, why is it Mutter if it's half and half? If it's Ruba. Hashem, the Eibishter, taught Moshe that it should not be majority open. It's not, it's half and half. Rav Huna Breder Rabbi Shua, Amarasa, Rav Huna Breder Rabbi Shua says that it's forbidden. It means it doesn't work. Hashem taught Moshe, Gedur Ruba. You have to put up a fence to the majority. You didn't. It's half and half. You don't have majority fence. So how do you look at it? Should it not be majority open, or should it be majority closed? And the difference there is when it's 50-50. Now, the term is a bit problematic because this is not a biblical law. Probably with 3 mechitzas, it's already, it could be Rosh Hashanah much easier than having these walls filled in like that. This is just an expression. That means, what was the rabbinic institution of having these type of walls? That's how the Rishonim explain this. Tanan, we're going to bring some proofs one way or another. For the first proof is it's a proof for Rav Papa, and it's a raya from our Mishnah. Tanan, was taught in our Mishnah, you can't have more breaches in the wall than standing wall. Binyan, but let's say it's equal. Sounds like it's fine. It's mutter. It's a raya to Rav Papa. It's a kasha on Rav Huna Breder Rabbi Shua. 50-50 sounds like it's okay. When it says laitema hakabinyan mutter, don't say that diuk, that implication. You don't say that. Rather, what you should do is alaima. You should say im binyan yeser ala pirza. Then it's mutter. If there is more wall than breach, then it's permissible. Aval kabinyan mai. But let's say if it's 50-50, what did you just gain? Asr. Yachi listening la pritzas kabinyan. If that's the case, then let it say that there shouldn't be breaches the same amount as the wall. If that's what it wants to say, that it can't be like that. It's kasha. It's a kasha on Rav Huna. We didn't really get out of this one. We thought we were fixing it. We started off saying, can't be more breaches than wall. When it says, well, that sounds like 50-50 is going to be mutter. It's a kasha and Rav Huna. You see, don't say that. Read it the other way. Read it that if there is more wall, then it's going to be fine. Well, that means that if it's 50-50, then it's not going to be fine. Then it's a kasha and Rav Papa. Okay, Gemara ends off with a kasha. Tashima, now we're going to do a comparison, which is not a perfect comparison. What we're actually looking here at is not that a wall that's 50% wall, 50% opening. We're not learning to a wall. We're learning to schach on a sukkah. They're very different. But nevertheless, what we're looking at is how do we view 50-50? Do we view it as satisfactory or do we view it as not? That's the comparison. Tashima, come listen. Someone puts metal spits, maybe used for roasting or something. He puts them on the roof of his sukkah. That's a problem. It's not kosher schach. But his redeeming factor is that he didn't fill up the whole roof with them. He's going to put on kosher schach as well. Or he takes bedposts. Now, bedposts are kalim. You're not allowed to use kalim for schach. Let's say these bedposts, these spits, you line them up on the roof of the sukkah, but you leave gaps in between them. So let's see if there's a picture here. That's our paritz ka'imed. That's the fence there that has the same amount opening. Now we're looking at the roof of the sukkah. Maybe those are the bed pieces of the bed frame. And there's the equal amount of gaps in between them. So we say, then it's ksheira. If it's equal, then it's kasha. This is a kasha on Rav Huna Beit Rav Yeshua. Equal is good. Why are you telling me that equal amounts is bad? Equal is good. Okay. The Gemara answers, the reason why equal is good is because it's not equal. It's because there's a little bit more given to the kosher schach, because this is set on the pasal schach is set on the sukkah. You need to insert kosher schach. When you insert kosher schach, in order to get it in, it can't be exact, it can't be precise, because then it won't fit in. There needs to be a little bit more room to be able to get it in, and therefore, that's why it's going to be kosher. Gemara says, how do you know that that's the case? Maybe it's exact. We're talking about a case where he left a little bit more. There's a little more room for the kosher schach. So notice it's not perfectly equal. That's our answer. Rav Amar, Eiruvin, nice and Shesi, nice and Eiruvin. Rav gives another answer. Now, there's different answers here according to Rashi and Tosfos how to learn this. Rashi learns that I could be mevatel non-kosher schach by putting a little bit extra kosher schach, overlapping it. So what I'm doing is if I have beams that are going one way that are not kosher because they're bedposts, I can put the kosher schach the other opposite direction, and because it needs to be held by overlapping, so the overlapping of the kosher schach, even though the spaces in the middle are perfectly equal. And so really, when I look up, the shade is coming from 50-50. But because I've overlapped the non-kosher schach with kosher schach, I've nullified the invalid schach with the kosher schach, and it's considered like there's more kosher schach. Now, usually nullification doesn't take place when you can still see it. This is a special halacha, that nullification of the invalid schach takes place. Tashema, another proof. This is going to go the other way. Be a kasha on Rav Papa that says that it's permissible. There's a caravan that's spending Shabbos in an open area. They surrounded it with camels. They must be tied, those camels, with saddles, gavitim, saddle cushions, shlifim, stalks, or sheaves of wheat, bekanim, reeds, bekolchas, as other stalks. Metalkin b'seif, you can carry them. V'vachlei ben gamal gamal kamalei gamal, ben lokav kamalei yokav, ben avet lavet kamalei avet. There should not be between these saddle cushions or between these saddles or between these camels the same amount. The gaps should not be equal. Mamish kasha and Papa says if it's equal, it's fine. As long as you don't have larger gaps, that's the problem. No, it's talking about when it's larger. Equal means that it's larger. More equal, right? Okay. Tashima. Come and listen. Also, another kasha on Rav Papa. The following is going to take us all the way down to the bottom of the page. What we're talking about here is a fence that's going to separate two plants, a grapevine and wheat. Now, if there's a valid fence there, then it's fine. But if there isn't a valid fence, then it becomes kalayim. So what's a valid fence? Well, a fence would need to be at least 4 tefachim to be a valid fence. Let's say there's gaps in it. and all that. So there's going to be three categories of fences, and how big. And what if you plant opposite the gap? What if you plant opposite the fence, but the rest of the fence has gaps? It's a little complex. And what we're trying to bring out is, what about the 50-50? That's what we're interested in. It starts off like this. There's three measurements, three categories of partitions between these diverse kinds of growth. Number one, kol shepachas mishleisha. Any fence that's less than 3 tvachim. Tzarich shleiyeh ben zel hazeh shleisha. As long as you don't have between this and that also 3 tvachim. Now, which is perfectly fine, because the way lavud works is that even if I have a stick, which is very thin stick, but I put it within 3 tvachim of another stick, that's going to be considered a solid wall. Because of lavud, anything that's within 3 tvachim is considered connected. Now, lavud is so strong that lavud does not, the questions that we're having of it, if is it more open than closed, lavud is considered closed. It's not considered open. Follow? Lavud is considered closed. That's considered solid. When we're talking about open, is it more open? That's only when we're not using lavud. That's only if the gap is larger than 3 tvachim. So if you have thin sticks that are within 3 tvachim of one another, that's perfectly fine. As long as a goat can't go in with one jump, it could probably wiggle its way through, but not with one jump. Okay, that's number one. Number two, kol shumi gimel, anything that's 3 tvachim, migimel adalit, or from in between 3 and 4. You can't have the gap in between this 3 and the next 3 tvachim. It doesn't say exactly 3 tvachim. It says it can't be the same size. Kimaloy, like the gap can't be the size of the standing wall. Kadesh lay a parts garment so that it shouldn't be equal. Wow, shouldn't be equal. It's from the Breder of Yeshua. When the Breder of Yeshua says if it's equal, it's a problem. Pretty clear. So, I mean, just from this, it's clear. We'll see. It gets a little more complex when you start to see other statements that fit with your pup. V'im haya paratz meruba la'imid. But if there's more breach than wall, that's a problem. I'd have to say if there's more breach than wall, even if it's 50-50. Let's see. More breach than wall, then you can't even plant at the wall part. How big was the wall that we're talking about? In between 3 and 4 tvachim. That's not considered a wall yet. More breach than wall nullifies that wall. Okay, that's case number 2. So case number 1 was each partition was under 3 tvachim. Case number 2 is each partition is in between 3 and 4. Case number 3, kol shu dalid u'me arba ad eser amos. Anything that's 4 tvachim, from 4 tvachim until 10 amos, tzarich shleiyeh ben zel hazeh k'maloi. You can't have a gap in between the same size, 4 tvachim, 5 tvachim, 5 amos. You can't have the gap, can't be the same. Shleiyeh parts garment. You should not be equal gap to a standing wall. Vim haya parts garment. If it is the same size, this is consistent. If it can't be the same size, and if it is the same size, so then keneged ha'imid mutter. You can plant directly opposite the wall on both sides. One side vines, one side wheat, because the wall is a real wall. Keneged aparatz aser, but opposite the gaps, that's a problem. That's a real gap. There's a real gap and there's a real wall, so you have to see where it is. But if it's more wall than gaps, then even opposite the gaps, you can still plant because you have a wall here. There's openings. Okay, that's an opening. That's like a doorway. Nifritza b'yasir miyaser However, whatever the case is, if the gaps are larger than 10 amas, then it's asr. Then it's forbidden. That's considered that there's no wall. That's a real breach in the wall. If you have sticks that are in the ground, and then you can make braided vines that go above, even if it's more than 10 amas, it's still permissible. Why? Well, that's already a tzuras of Pesach. You have two side posts. These are the sticks that are in the ground, and the vine that's going above the top. So that's going to be mutter. Let's see if there's a picture here that help us out. Okay, they're surrounding their area with all types of things. Here we have two posts that are 2 finger breadths, and there's 2 tvachim in between. This was case number 1. This is if there's 3 tvachim in between. You see the goat can get in between. Here are posts that are in between 3 tvachim and 4 tvachim, and you can't have the gap in the middle the same size as that. Here we're talking about, let's go to this one. You're able to plant, in this case, opposite the wall, but not opposite the gap. Notice how we did that? This is if the wall is in between 4 and 10 amas, 4 tvachim to 10 amas. And here he's showing you how we put the vine across the top. That's going to be, even if it's larger than 10 amas. Okay. That's the end of our pictures for today. So Ketani Miyas Reisha, nevertheless, it was taught in the beginning. Gimel Va'ad Daled, from 3 to 4, it's not really the beginning. It's the middle case. From in between 3 tvachim and 4 tvachim, as long as you don't have an equal amount. Why? Equal amount is going to be aser. So you have to do Rav Papa. It's a kasha on Rav Papa. We mentioned this as we were learning it. Rav Papa says equal is permitted. We said equal is not permitted. Equal gaps to standing wall. Amalach Rav Papa says, my malayai. What does it mean equal? Nichnas v'yaitze. It's equal in the way that you can put it in. You can fill it in with something, but that doesn't mean that it's really equal. Really equal would mean that you couldn't even stick it in because it would be precise. Here, it's enough to put it in and take it out, so then it widens it. It also makes sense to say that. Why? Because if you look at the way this was put, as long as you don't have an equal amount, then it goes on and says, but if you have more gaps than standing wall, then it's going to be prohibited, even opposite the wall. But let's say it's exactly the same. Mutter. Papa's right. Why did it have to tell me if there's more gaps than wall, that it's aser? Even if it's 50-50, it's aser. No, 50-50 is mutter. That's why it didn't say that. Shema Mina, it's a raya to Rav Papa. We started asking a kasha on Rav Papa. Turned out Rav Papa turned the whole thing around. He has such a strong proof. The Gemara says, it's such a strong raya. Now it's a kasha on the other way. You see clearly that it says if there's more gaps than standing wall, it's a problem. That means 50-50 is okay. It's a kasha on Rav Yeshua. Amalach, Rav Yeshua will respond all the time. According to you, Aim Seifa, let's read the end of the Mishnah. The last case, we had 3 cases. If there's more wall than gaps, then it's permissible even next to the gaps. But if it would be 50-50, then it would be aser. See, 50-50 is no good. So Seifa Kashalar of Papa Resha Kashalar of Rav Yeshua comes out. The different cases here. What the end case is a kasha on Rav Papa. The middle case, it calls it the Resha. The first case, it's not the first case. It's the beginning of is a kasha on Rav Yeshua. The Gemara says Seifa Rav Papa like kasha. No, it's not a problem. Why? Because the Mishnah tries to be parallel. It's a brisa. So it tries to be parallel. And the way it works is like this. I did the Tani Resha parts Merubalaim because in the beginning we said that if there's more gaps than standing wall, that's the problem. But 50-50 is okay. So because you said more gaps than wall, so Tana Seifa Merubala parts. So in order to be parallel, to be symmetrical. So then when we were talking at the end, we said more wall than gaps. That's just because that was the term that we were using the first time. We didn't get into 50-50. Here we said more, and in the Seifa we also say more, the opposite. More. Rachel Rav Huna Breder Shul is also like kasha. The the same answer. We're trying to be symmetrical. I did the Bailamishne, Seifa, Aymed Murvala parts, because in the end we wanted to say more wall than gaps is acceptable. 50-50 is not. More wall than gaps is acceptable. So Tani Reisha parts Murvala Aymed. So therefore in the beginning we also said more opening than wall, even though 50-50 would also be a problem. Gemara says, Bishlam l'Rav Papa Mishumachali Yarav Lu V'Tani Lu. A little bit of an issue here. According to Rav Papa, if I have a wall of 3 tvachim, should I leave it over here? Should we stop right here? We'll stop at the Bishleima. If I go, you know what? Let me go on another 3 lines, because that way we won't have to go over this piece. We'll be able to start. What happens is, according to Rav Papa, if I have a wall of 3 tvachim and then a gap of 3 tvachim, it's permissible. So the gap needs to be larger than the wall. That's according to Rav Papa. So that's case number 2. Case number 1 is if I have a wall of 2 finger breadths, let's say, and then I have a gap of 3 tvachim, then even that gap of exactly 3 tvachim is already puzzle, because I don't say lavud. Once I have a wall of 3 tvachim, then the gap next to it needs to be larger than 3 tvachim. So that's why case number 1 and case number 2 are different. However, according to Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, who holds that a wall of 3 tvachim and a gap of 3 tvachim, even if it's exactly precise 50-50, it's also puzzle. So then 3 tvachim of the case number 2 and 3 tvachim of case number 1 is exactly the same. According to Rav Papa, the 3 tvachim of case number 2 meant more than 3 tvachim. So I get why you divide it in 2 cases. Case number 1 is exactly 3 tvachim. Case number 2 is 3 tvachim, which means a little bit more. Good. But according to Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, the 3 tvachim and 3 tvachim, even if it's exactly it's the same, so why do you divide it into 2 cases? It goes like this. According to Rav Papa, I get why you divided it, because 3 tvachim of case number 1 is exactly 3 tvachim. But 3 tvachim, case number 2 is more than 3 tvachim. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, Rav Huna V'Lisninu. Kol shupachas mishleisha u'shleisha. Any wall that's less than 3, or if it's exactly 3. You shouldn't have between the 2 of them. You shouldn't have between them 3 tvachim. Gemara answers, according to Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, I'll give you the explanation. Why didn't it combine them together? Even though you're right, it's exactly the same halacha. Because the logic of them is different. It goes like this. What's the reason why 3 tvachim invalidates little posts that are next to each other? Because a goat can go in between, and that makes it, uproots the lavud. But when I have a wall of 3 tvachim, that's because another 3 tvachim would invalidate the wall, because it would be exactly the same. Okay, let's stop it.
Where did we stop exactly, please?
We stopped right before. Tomorrow we'll start from Pachas Mishlesh, the bottom 2 lines.
Okay, thank you.